Trolling law enforcement, what is your story? So I'll give my example here. I was reminded after reading the post about someone warning a kid buying from an undercover cop. Back when I was in school, the university newspaper ran a story about undercover cops using a younger, cute girl to camp outside the liquor store just off campus and ask people to buy her beer. She'd give the people money, then ask them if they wanted to come back to her vehicle and share one as a way to say thanks. Get back to where her car is supposed to be, van door opens up, cops inside, and you'd get a ticket for underage buying. Later that evening, my friend and I were going to this same liquor store to get some beer, when we were approached by a cute girl, who asked us if we could buy her a 6-pack of beer since she was underage. Being a dumbass, I said sure, took her money and we went inside. About 10 seconds later I remember the piece about the undercover cops, and realized we were about to get arrested. At that point, we decided the best thing to do was to buy a 6-pack of super expensive root beer, blowing $9 of the $20 she gave us, and we put it in a paper bag. We walked back out, and she asked us, "Did you get it?" To which we said yeah, of course. She invited us back to her car to have one each as a thank you. Sure enough, we head to the back and there's the black van. The door opens up, cops sitting in there with headphones on etc., and they tell us you're in a world of trouble now. I put on my best troll face and said, really? I really thought you guys could use some root beer sitting out here in that cramped van all night. There was an awkward pause, and then they opened the bag. Root beer, nothing else. Then they told us to get the F out of there, and we were interfering with a police investigation, and if we didn't leave we'd get arrested. We walked across the street to our apartment building, went into the various laundry rooms and yelled out the window every time she approached someone that it was a sting. They left after 20 minutes of that. College town. Huge party. Excise cops are in town busting parties left and right. Ours gets busted. They proceed handing out tickets to underage drinkers. One kid gets a scrap piece of paper and folds it into the shape of the tickets the cops are handing out and sits on the front steps with his head and hands repeating, "My parents are gonna kill me." Cops just pass him right by. There was a speed trap where I grew up on PA Route 74. One of the markers, since it was a Vascar trap, was a white plastic jug. I often stopped along that route when I saw the jug there, grabbed the jug, and drove off. I got stopped once doing this. The cop seemed really angry. I told him I see that thing there all the time, and it bothers me that nobody has bothered to pick up that trash. When I was a senior in high school, we got a new vice principal from some inner city school who thought he was a real hard case. He would actually go around smelling kids' fingers for the scent of weed. My buddy and I came back from lunch one day, both stone sober, and heard Mr. Hardcase, I forget his real name, was coming out to the parking lot to check fingers. My friend looked at me, then wedged his right hand down the back of his pants into his crack. He left it there until we saw the VP coming our way, then pulled it out nonchalantly and we waited. Sure enough, the VP walked up and, in his usual threatening manner, told us to hold out our hands. I did. He smelled my fingers, then moved on to my friend. I could barely keep from losing it as he took a big sniff and then literally jumped backwards, yelling something about my friend needing to wash his damn hands. Needless to say, this ended the finger-smelling technique at my high school. Around 2 a.m. on a Saturday night I was pulled over for suspicion of DWI. I hadn't had a drop. They asked me to step out of the car and gave me a sobriety test. I passed with flying colors. They asked me if they could search the vehicle. I told them they could search the vehicle, with the sole exception of the center console. They would need a warrant for that. After several hours sitting roadside, they finally produced a warrant from a judge. The center console was empty. This was about 10 years ago. My mother had a large plant in a plastic pot that died. I took the pot full of dirt and put it in the trunk of my car to replant something at my house. I forgot about it for a few weeks. I got pulled over for something. The cop asked, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "Was it speeding, or was it because of the pot in my trunk?" He got me out of the car and had me put my palms on the hood while I was searched. He opened the trunk and was not happy. I got chewed out for wasting his time and such and such. I noticed that not one single car passed, so it wasn't wasting too much of his time. When my buddy and I were about 16, and stupid as hell, we did a lot of nonsense playing on cops, but this was by far our best. We'd spend a ton of time lurking around grocery/toy stores at 3 a.m., toy stores earlier, obviously, until one of us got an idea looking at an item in a way that it was not intended to be used in the way we wanted to use it. Normal hilarity ensued, Vaseline on padlocks, bubbles in fountains, that kind of stuff. This night was different. We're sitting in the sandwich aisle of our large local store and my buddy's eyes light up. He looks over at me and goes, "Get that peanut butter, smooth kind." This having been about the 4th year of us doing this, I wasn't 100% sure where he was going with it, but I knew not to question, so I bought 2 of those huge smooth peanut butter things. We walk outside, cross the street, and he tells me to rip the safety seal off the peanut butter, and to get some on my fingers, and mess up the smooth top. This was where it clicked in. We then proceed to walk absolutely as suspiciously as possible through this little town square. Sure enough, halfway through, we get spotlighted. Cop pulls up, tells us to stop, and we both instinctively put the peanut butter behind our backs, obviously holding something. Cop gets out and the conversation with my friend goes like this: "What you got there, son?" "Nothing." "What's behind your back?" "Nothing." I giggle. "Show me your hands." My buddy very slowly puts the peanut butter behind his shoes and socks, and shows the cop his hands. "Give me that, it's mine." So the cop reaches behind my friend's feet and grabs this jar of peanut butter. He spins the top off and sees that it's not in pristine shape. Demands to know what's in it. My buddy: "Peanuts, salt, maltodextrin, red 3. What did you hide in the peanut butter?" "Nothing." "Then why do you have it?" "Sandwiches." Cop looks at my pal and then back at me, still holding peanut butter behind my back, and he does it, shoves his hand and arm into my pal's peanut butter and starts throwing hunks out into the parking lot. And my pal loses it. He went off on a tirade of peanut rights, the peanut rebellion, just harassing us because we're white, peanut civil rights, the peanut pride parade, who doesn't know about the PPP? And on and on. He realizes there's nothing in it, and turns to me, furious. Doesn't say a word, just grabs my peanut butter, and almost knocks me over. I tell him Mr. Goodbar's lawyer will hear of this. He does the same thing to me, and I launch into a tirade about my working family, and our right to sandwiches, and the peanut labor movement, and collective bargaining rights, and candy power fighting the man, and so on. He figures out what's going on, and slams himself back into his car, covered in peanut butter. Yells something about us breaking curfew, kinda half chuckling, and tears out. My friend tells him he owes us a sandwich, as he drives away. And I thought that was the end of the story. And it was, until 5 years ago. I'm telling this to my brother's best friend, who I did not know was the son of the police dispatcher for our town at this time. Apparently, he had to go back and fill out incident paperwork, as there's no way to hide this peanut stuff on his steering wheel, car, and uniform. The next day there was a sandwich on his chair. The day after that, baseball peanuts in his locker, the day after, PB in the shower, etc., etc., etc. He still gets peanut-related trolling to this day. I grew up in a small town, really small. The only way to have any form of entertainment was to drive 30 minutes to the next city to go to the movies, bowling, etc. Just so happens that on the highway halfway between the 2 cities there was a small town known for being a speed trap. The highway was out of the jurisdiction of the local police, so what the marshal would do is hide in between overpasses to catch speeders, force them to pull over onto the frontage road, which was in his jurisdiction. Then he would claim an exaggerated speed. When people asked to see his radar, which is perfectly legal, he claimed that he didn't have to because it was illegal. Any claims reported to his superiors seemed to go ignored, until he ran into me. Over time my friends and I had timed his patrols and realized that he patrolled towards the end of the month. One night he had stopped a friend for excessive speeding. The officer claimed 92 in a 60 zone, which was BS, and then we knew something had to be done. The officer had taken his plate number and claimed to have seen it speeding many different times, and we knew he would look out for it. So I decided to take my phone and rig it up to record the speedometer and get pulled over by the officer. It took a few tries, but I managed to get pulled over by the same officer, for doing 70 and 60, that being a first-time offense. After giving him my license he went on to claim that I was doing at least 85, and giving me the whole bit about how he cannot show me the radar, as well as giving me a ticket claiming it was a repeat offense and how I should be put into jail. All this being caught on my phone without him noticing. So a few days later I show up to the courthouse to pay the ticket, and I managed to talk to the mayor of the town and showed him the video of all this. Thanks to me the officer got fired and I didn't have to pay a $400 ticket from a douchebag. My mother drives a Jeep, which the top is often off of. We pulled up in the fire lane out front of a bank, because my mother is kind of an idiot, and she ran inside to use the ATM. I was 15 at the time, and while she's inside a police officer walks up to the Jeep, sticks his head in the driver's side window, and says, "Is this your vehicle, son?" To which I replied, "Yes, I sometimes like to park in illegal places and sit in my own passenger seat." He didn't say a word, stood back, crossed his arms and just glared at me. My mom came out about 10 seconds later. He took a look at her and said, "Have a nice day, ma'am," and walked away. In the city I live in, you need to purchase a license to work in public spaces / the street. A few weeks ago, I was walking through a pedestrian zone, where a man was playing the violin and I stopped by to listen. Sure enough, within a minute 2 policemen showed up and asked him for his license. Of course he didn't have one, so they started taking his information to give him a fine. That's when an old lady started talking to me really loudly about how that's a shame, and I answered something along the line of, "They are right to stop him. What would become of the world if everybody just started to play music on the street? People might start dancing." This goes on for about 5 minutes, the lady and me standing about 3 feet from the police, and maybe 20 people stopped and were watching, everyone else walking by is smirking. It was a good feeling when I heard, "You know what? We're gonna let you go this time. Make sure to buy a license." So it's the 1st of August in Switzerland, same as 4th of July in the US, a few years ago. My friends and I, we drink and watch the fireworks. And then drink some more. At some point, there's 3 of us left, we mount our bicycles and drive down the hill back into town. Completely wasted, without light, singing. So a cop car flashes the blue lights when we approach, really fast. Friend number 1 drives into the bushes on the right side of the street and hides there. Completely mad. My friend and I, we don't react and come to a standstill in front of the police vehicle. 2 cops get out. I will never forget what follows. The litany by the cops: dark, no light, driving in the middle of the road, endangering ourselves and other people, was to be expected. My friend nods, says yeah, and then one officer asks him why he doesn't have a bicycle bell, mandatory in Switzerland. At that point, I am doing the math in my head: no light, wrong direction, no bell, the alcohol, we're looking at several $100s, if we're not lucky. My friend gets angry and points at a rubber giraffe on his handlebar. "Officer, I do have a bicycle bell," squeezes the thing, and it makes this ridiculous squeaky noise. The cop gets angry and says, "Sir, this is no bell, don't be silly." My friend gets more agitated, says it's even louder than a standard bell and works just fine, squeezing the thing to prove his point. At this point, I completely lose it. I cannot help myself, I am dying from laughing, and I can't stop, even though the cop gets angrier by the second. My friend continues to squeeze the stupid rubber giraffe, repeating, "This is even better than a bell, sir." Then he starts laughing uncontrollably, too. At this moment, my other friend, why, he doesn't know himself, decides to leave his hiding place just 15 meters across the road. He shoots out of the bushes, pedaling madly downhill, and falls on his ass, the bike flying away. He does this sort of somersault, rolls downhill fast, gets to his feet, and runs like hell. The cops watch this spectacle incredulously. We continue laughing, tears flowing down our cheeks. No way to stop. "Who is that?" the cops ask, now not sure if they should follow my other friend or keep on with the 2 of us. The only answer they get, more laughter. At which point, and by now, we are totally sure that this is going to be the most expensive night ever, the radio goes off. Some car accident. They look at us. At each other. Helplessly. Get in the car, and drive away. We, laughing and singing, and squeaking the stupid giraffe, drive on. No ticket, no nothing. Got arrested after walking out of a bar when I was 18 with a 6-pack. Cops said the only way I wouldn't be charged was if I would walk back in the bar in a couple weeks, with a recording device, and buy another 6-pack, probably putting the bar out of business. I agreed. Walked into the bar, asked for a 6-pack, and when the bartender looked me in the eyes, I just shook my head at him and mouthed no. He ID'd me, told me to get the fuck out. Cops get nothing, I didn't get charged. I once had a police officer help me troll my friends, and it was his idea. A few years ago, me and some of my college buddies were driving around in the middle of nowhere just hanging out. None of us drink, smoke anything, or participate in any drug-related activities. I'm driving and there were 5 of us in the car. I look up and a cop is right behind me pulling me over. I pull over and the cop asked if I had been drinking. I said no, and that I was a little offended that he would even ask that because we were all good kids that didn't drink. Mind you, I totally act and look like someone who is constantly on something. So he asks me to get out of the car and brings me over to the hood of the car. All my friends are watching and they're already scared shitless. The officer says to me, "Hey, you want to play a joke on your friends?" I say hell yeah, and he told me that when he bends me over the car and spreads my legs apart to throw my shoulder into him and run. I'm thinking to myself that this can't possibly be real life, but sure enough I did it, and he totally sold the hit because he went flying and I ran back into the car and sped away. My friends were absolutely scared shitless for about 3 hours. I don't think they stopped yelling at me for a good 45 minutes. I love Drew Carey's cop trolling. He claims after he started making decent money, he would purposefully speed through stop signs on very rainy, stormy nights. Officer, do you know why I pulled you over? Drew, yeah, do you know why I sped through that stop sign?